Catching a big bug. No, I mean, it blows. I'm wondering if it blows.
You'll hear
You said, how can I describe that sound to you? You said it's like a car wreck right over your head.
it. And that's a
mean-
very distinct sound.
And if it blows, we'll know it. Caught it in time.
Yes, thank you.
So I would shut it off like
Was it?
louder than the helicopter hovering over my house. That's what it sounds like now.
You're on. Thank you for joining us today to the Graham City Council Special Meeting Agenda, July 18th, 2022, 12 p.m. Call the meeting to order. This meeting is for the specific purpose of addressing ARPA funds. So we'll review and discuss potential uses for ARPA funds during a lunch session. And you want to take it, or is Aaron?
I'll take it.
Okay. I passed the phone to.
I got it. So the city of Graham in total will receive just under $5 million from ARPA funding. It's actually $4,986,340.22. The second round of our allocation was supposed to have been deposited last week. I haven't verified, but Julianne could determine if we did receive that. These funds have to be encumbered by the end of 2024 and spent by the end of 2026. So sort of congruent with budget time, we asked for departments to submit any projects, if we were living in their world, what they would like to have funded. So what you have before you, and it was uploaded to SharePoint, and there are some hard copies available at the front, is essentially what departments pitched to us as staff. It was Aaron, Julianne, and myself who sat through these meetings. We have made it through budget since that time. So we went through and updated the list, and some projects have already been included in with others, and some are just not recommended for funding at this time. So we really want to get council's opinion and approval for which projects you would like to see allocated through the ARPA funds so that we can prepare a project ordinance to bring back to council to start whittling away at some of these. And on the police one up here, there are some unspent or unbudgeted funds for the COPS program that would need to be considered for ARPA.
The COPS program?
Yeah, the community oriented policing, those are the 6
Oh,
programs.
COPS. I'm
Mhm.
sorry. I thought you said, okay.
And then kind of tying with the PD, the other item on your agenda is the school resource officer funding.
Does that scroll down?
It does. Aaron will scroll momentarily.
Do we provide funding for police officers at the school?
So right now they pay the school system pays 65,000 per SRO. They are upping that amount to 70,000 is my understanding, in meetings that Chief Cole has had with them. But they want to add 2 additional officers for the elementary schools that are within Graham. So the 70,000 would essentially pay for the person plus their benefits, retirement and all that. And then the city would be on the hook for paying to outfit that individual. They do have some spare cars they can use at this time, but at some point those spares would need to be replaced, which would be on the city's dime to pay for that.
I could not make the math work on that. I do not, you'll have to show me how we come up with $130,000 for an officer without a vehicle.
Y'all want to take that one?
Good afternoon. So directly addressing your question of 103,
130, isn't it?
130. I've prepared a presentation talking about all of it to present to y'all as a governing body to make the decision. I've got an itemized list. I don't think that you want to get into the minutia of how much every little thing costs, but I do have that prepared in case you do want to know that. So to address that in particular, looking back to our 21-22 budget, to address the 6 COP officers, we asked for, due to a lean workload assessment, we asked for 10 officers. We're given those 2 from the January 2022. And we're told to seek the additional grant funding, which we did, and we got the 6 officers. Unfortunately, we didn't obtain the grant for the equipment for those 6 officers. Looking forward, we didn't have a plan for the vehicles other than to include it into our budget. Unfortunately, the 22-23 budget does not fund the 6 COP or the 2 new SROs that just came up on in June. In that budget were 3 vehicles. They were to replace the aging fleet. There were no vehicles allotted for those new positions. Here recently, we have cut things that were from our approved budget just to fund the basics of radios and tasers. And I know I'm coming around full circle on this, but this is just so you understand what we have done in order to seek additional funding to show you what the actual numbers are. We have been a lean department. We've exhausted our surplus gear. From the 21-22 and the 22-23, we have used $104,000 to budget to offset the equipment. Even recently, we were able to use drug funds to purchase 2 vehicles and hoped for that to align with the January 22 police officers that were hired. As far as where our fleet stands, patrol is the largest department or largest division. They require operationally sound vehicles, pursuit rated. Of those vehicles, 75% of them are 5 years old or less. The remaining 25 are between 6 and 10 years old. Our spare vehicles are 10 plus years old. Our remaining fleet, our administration, our support services, and CID, of those 7 of them were purchased through other means and they were purchased used, meaning we didn't buy them new. We purchased them as vehicles that were not fit. We purchased some from Greensboro. I myself drive a 2006 Tahoe that was a surplus vehicle. We purchased from them.
Can I just, I guess, can you just address the question of how do we get to an officer being $130,000?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm aware of everything that you're saying. I'm aware of the issue of used vehicles and doing what we can to try to save money to, I know that they were sharing some vehicles at one point. But that sounds like new budget money, but just specifically for the SRO officers, I don't understand how we've gotten to $130,000. That was my question.
So the 130, I don't know where, I just know what my numbers are, and normally I give those. I don't know where you're reading on the screen from the 130, but I can
Well,
tell you
I
the
was
breakdown.
getting it from my understanding when I heard the announcement that the county was going to spend $70,000 on an SRO officer. I didn't foresee us spending money on an SRO officer if they're funding it. And then now I'm hearing they're going to give 70 and they want 50 from us.
Okay, I cannot address the 50 from us, but I can say
Well,
that
50 some, so it's like close to 130,000.
if I. Oh, perfect. Okay. So I have updated those numbers since then, and that's what I'm actually looking at right now. That's what I want to say exactly. So the 50 has actually grown because you know me, I'm going to be down to the penny, and just our portable radios that we carry have went up $1,000 in the last month. So those numbers have grown tremendously, not to mention our uniforms have grown. And that's something I continually update from all our different sources so we can map this out. The SRO vehicles for that $50,000, that is to address the equipment, uniforms, ballistic vest, all the minutia that makes that officer a total kit. Also, you have to address the vehicles. A complete vehicle kit, patrol vehicle is by the new numbers, are $68,000. That's including the vehicle, the upfitting, the cage, the radio, I have that actually listed, itemized. The cameras. Now, our cameras for that vehicle, that's also for the officer and for the vehicle. SROs, we can, and I have that too. Would y'all like an updated copy of this?
I would, because I was told specifically that the amounts that they were asking for did not include vehicles.
Okay, may I
So
approach?
that's why I was like, how, and there's no way. I know what we pay our officers, and I was like, there's no way that that doesn't include a vehicle.
Right.
So it does include the vehicle.
The $70,000 we're getting from the school system is only to address their salary. The other money is what we have to plan for as a city for the vehicle.
So do we, because the other thing that I was told was that we get, like, when they're assigned SRO officers, they're reporting to the school 5 days a week on the school system schedule. And then, like, during the summers and things like that, what happens with those SRO officers?
We field them as needed. Now, overseeing the SROs, they do have a duty and obligation to be inside the schools when schools being in session. They don't take a lot of time off, so sometimes they do take their time off there. We also send them to training because I do not like to send them to training while school's in session. But like if the kids are there, they should be there. 2 of them are participating in the Junior Police Academy the entire month of July. 2 of the SROs have went to week-long schools thus far. So when you take out the month of July, and then you look at June and August, the teachers report halfway back through August. So I would say there's 6 weeks in there that are unaccounted for. And if they don't have a plan, they backfill patrol and they work a patrol shift. One of the SROs currently is working at Ray Street Academy to have summer school for the Graham High School students.
But we are able to utilize them in the summertime.
Yes, we utilize them in other capacities.
Because I guess my question was, is it necessary for them to have a vehicle?
They need a vehicle. They transport children. Often parents can't come and pick them up. There's been an emergency or whatnot. So they do transport children. Currently, we have been using older fleet vehicles to do that. Your Chevrolet Impala, we have a Taurus. They're aging vehicles, but they're assigned to those. They still are functionally police officers. So Ray Street specifically has to have a cage vehicle because
We're not talking about Ray Street. We're just talking about 2 elementary schools that don't have SRO officers. Is that right?
that's correct.
Okay.
Sorry. No, we need 2 elementary school SROs.
We currently have 3 SROs.
That's correct.
The elementary schools currently do have 1 in each. This would make a second one, right?
No.
No.
Elementary
No.
doesn't have any right now.
If you see a school resource officer or a Graham police officer in an elementary school, North or South Graham, they are being paid as an extra duty capacity through grant funding through ABSS.
Who we have now are not at the elementary.
High school, Graham High School, Graham Middle School, and Ray Street Academy.
Could I get a copy of what you got there, sir,
May I approach?
please?
please. Thank you, sir.
No. So if I may continue, I did submit a staff report that I have a revised copy with the exact numbers. I always like to be particular exactly to the number, and that is because everything is getting more expensive. And that's just where we're at as a country right now. I don't like it. I don't think anybody does. And it was shocking to me just to hear a radio quote that should have been good in March was no longer good. So everything is going up. The additional was we are switching from three different systems into one system that for vehicle cameras and body worn cameras. So those numbers were not included on your staff report for those vehicles. If you want those, I can provide those to you. At this point, we're asking to be operational. I understand that the two SROs positions were something late in the game that came. We knew that the 6 officers were coming. We have to equip them. We have to give them uniforms. We have to give them handguns, radios, the basic kit of what it is to be a police officer. Now, I understand that SRO vehicles, we can find other means if that is something else, but these 6 COP officers need patrol vehicles. They are, for all intents and purpose, patrol officers who are responding to calls. They will be focusing their efforts in communities that need their assistance. They still need cage vehicles. They still need pursuit rated vehicles. They still need quality. These vehicles are not just driving students around from point A to point B. These are being, I don't want to say abused, but they are being pushed to their capacity. They are running, they are starting and stopping. This is a city, so it's not like it's long haul distances. They do take a beating. So we are asking at this point to be operational, and I open it up to any other further questions you have.
I'm so confused. I really am. I didn't expect the numbers. I was really having a hard time understanding where the numbers were coming from. Megan, when I talked to you about the budget, said that you thought that you had discussed with Chief Cole about the upcoming officers, and that they thought with the current budget that they could move things around based on what was funded, what was not funded from the ask, and that they would be able to handle these officers coming in.
When we had discussion about PD budget cuts in a budget work session, and I know there was some question about could PD function within their allocation, I remember specifically stating that Chief Cole had looked at the overall allocation and felt comfortable that the PD could operate within what was given to them. They experienced budget cuts like every department going through the budget process. But they had pitched, like I said, pretty much congruent with budget, that some of the funding for the COP officers to get them up and running would be funded through ARPA. Now, there's a little bit in their budget now to help get these officers equipped, but they're not 100% funded through the budget. But they're also, at this point in time, there are, I think, 3 filled, and then 2 will likely be transitioning to other assignments. So I think Chief Cole has 2 years to fill those spots, those 6 spots. So
the current, my impression from what you said was that the current budget for the officers that we are hiring now, that we can outfit them, so to speak.
yeah, some of that is built into this current year's budget for those COP officers. Yes.
So why 2 weeks later, we're asking for $600,000?
Where are you getting 600,000? I'm sorry.
total need with vehicles, 606,188.
And that's, how many vehicles are you talking about?
That's for 8 vehicles and for
Is
the
that a-
606, that is the additional 62,000 of solid equipment needs for their kit.
Okay.
And then the additional is for the 8 patrol vehicles.
Is that priced at a brand new
That is.
price?
Yes,
So-
ma'am.
So we could do conceivably a little, less and buy used vehicles, as you were
For-
talking about?
For the SROs, that is an option. It's probably not ideal, but it is an option. But operationally speaking, for the 6 police officers, we do not buy used vehicles for the patrolmen that are in the fields. We'll reserve that for administration, detectives, and in this case, it would be SROs if needed.
It seems we're talking about the the 6 officers we're bringing in. The 2 SRO, is that from the 6 or in addition to the 6?
When I originally planned this spreadsheet you're seeing now I have updated it to show it adds itself so you can take away and add in, but that was originally for the 6 COP officers only.
Right.
I've adapted with the addition of the 2 additional officers, we're planning for a total of 8.
So it is, okay, so it's 6 plus 2, not 6 of which will take 2 to be school resource officers. So
So
what we're now asking for is equipping 8 officers in lieu of 6.
yes, sir.
But understand that we just, in this prior year budget, already funded 2.
Yeah.
Only got the cops grant at 6, and now they're asking for another 2.
Right.
Yeah, so in the prior year budget, as Mayor Talley said, 2 additional officers were funded for half the year. So January of this year, they had 2 additional positions. And then it's been since I've been here that the 6 were approved. They're not all filled. And then the request came after your budget had been approved for the school system to add 2 additional. So it's 2, 6, and 2. So basically a total of 10 in about a year.
So when you say funded, like with the grant and whatnot, does funded just cover that person and their salary and their benefits? And it doesn't cover, say, for instance, uniforms, radios, tasers, guns, that sort of equipment? It doesn't cover any of that? Bulletproof vests?
I would say it depends on the
per-
type of funding. So the 6 officers, the breakdown for that was 75, 25. But our portion is higher than 25% because the 75 is capped at a certain amount. So like I said, the original breakdown was 75, 25, but ours does end up being, our portion is higher than 25%. The 70,000 that the school system is proposing to fund the SROs, as you can see from their chart, the 70 would just be a little bit shy of covering one person and the benefits that go along with that individual, not anything that he or she needs to wear or drive for that matter.
Now we're up to 10.
Yeah.
We had 2 that were at 50%
For the year, yep.
for the year,
Mhm.
which we now will have to fund completely. Plus the 6 that we're adding via COP, plus 2 for the school resource officers. So now we're really talking about, as you said, Megan, 10 officers that we've got to fund, equip, and okay.
Could we use the 2 officers that we started funding last year as the school resource officers? And I guess, I understand that my understanding from some county commissioners is that this is in response to the shooting in Texas that they're concerned about. I don't like knee-jerk reactions. My very first question to the county commissioners was, well, have y'all done a needs assessment for security purposes. And my understanding through Senator Amy Gailey that the state is actually looking at funding that this upcoming year. I get concerned about these kind of knee-jerk reactions to things and just trying to plug a hole with something and it not necessarily be the answer. At Graham High School, they went for years without having a fence around their campus. And an SRO officer, I don't know how an SRO officer can be expected to have a secure campus when, in my opinion, the highest priority would have been, and I would assume, I'm not a police officer, but I would assume securing the campus with a fence, having one way in, having one way out. I mean, officers are human and, even in the Valdez, Texas shooting, there were officers literally on site within seconds. And so I don't understand how they believe that an SRO officer in that incident would have prevented that tragedy. I absolutely am very concerned about safety of our schools. But every school is different and the needs at elementary school, probably and just based on the physical makeup of that campus would be different from school to school. And I really get, I don't know what those are haven't talked to any principals, haven't talked to, as far as I know, no one did a needs assessment. They're just trying to stick a plug in a hole. And I don't know that necessarily is the right solution. Personally, I mean, I want to, if we're going to spend money, I want to do something that's going to actually make a difference. And make it to, I know that Rivermill employed a SRO officer and then decided, one of the wonderful things that they were able to do is basically like secure the entire campus, make sure there was one way in, one way out, set up a bunch of SOPs, like standard operating procedures for the school regarding safety, train the staff on safety. And then once he did all of that, they felt very comfortable, much more comfortable, implementing and maintaining those safety protocols. And they didn't feel, they actually defunded the SRO officer there. As a result, they just didn't feel that they had the amount of issues down there. And then if they do have like games and things, they pay for SOR officers through Extra Duty Solutions to come down there and provide that. But I recently went to a graduation at Graham High School, walked right on campus, multiple entries to the school. I mean, I have to be honest about that. I was quite concerned. You've got a large gathering, and even today in 2022, you can just walk on campus, nobody asks you who you are, and go to a very large gathering there. I don't know. To me, I feel like this is a little knee-jerk reaction. And I get concerned that we give the public a false sense of protection with that.
So there's part of being an SRO that's a proactive approach to security for that campus. Previously, I was an elementary school officer for many years. And the interaction with the parents on an everyday basis, the same officer, gives you a chance to receive information. If parents get information from other parents or students, or the rumor mill goes through, parents report, right? These officers in these school settings develop that relationship with the kids and their parents. It gave us a chance with the PTOs to really at PTO meetings to really empower the parents and talk about school safety, to let the kids know that we were going to be practicing safety drills. There was a lot of interaction between, I was at that time, I was the DARE officer, and I went between North Graham and South Graham Elementary. And so I also functioned as the safety officer for those two campuses. When the SRO program was first introduced into the city of Graham, it was only the high school level in the 90s. And then I was assigned as the DARE officer, and we shared responsibility for the middle school. So it was a lot for two officers to police all the schools in Graham and conduct all the safety drills and protocols and doing site security surveys and reporting that back to ABSS to have repairs made. One of the things that we discussed in meetings with the ABSS safety liaison, we need our reports to take priority. So if we have a door that's not locking, we need those things fixed. We're not just reporting it just to be reporting it. We're reporting it as a safety concern, as a site assessment. And Sergeant Edwards has those SROs continuously doing school site assessments and making reports to ABSS. The amount of funding that ABSS has allocated to the SRO program has significantly increased. The city used to bear the burden of paying half of the salary of an employee that was assigned to the school. So when we started the SRO program back in the 90s, the city of Graham paid 50% of salary and benefits. Today, ABSS is committed to the program, and they're paying 100% of salary and benefits fringe for employees. When the program was first started in Alamance County, there was some assistance on equipment, but at that time, they were not paying salary and benefits. They were only paying a portion of salary and benefits.
So these officers, you were mentioning that there were multiple entrances at the schools and things like that and unsecured doors. These officers would be doing these site assessments to get those things changed. Is that correct? I mean, because somebody's got to say, hey, we need to fix this.
So some of the things
they-
over the years that we addressed, especially at South Graham Elementary, where they had the modular classrooms,
Mhm.
when late 90s, early 2000, during site assessments, we voiced those concerns. So then the ABSS went with the scanning system to get into the mobile classrooms and back into the main building. So ABSS is responding when we make requests. The middle school, they have challenges with the structure of the building sometimes. So they use non-conventional methods to secure doors. They go back to the old style sometimes when it's necessary until they can get technology caught up. But they're definitely responding when we make requests and see security concerns on campuses.
But we've had an SRO officer at Graham High School for a very long time. It wasn't a Graham High School graduation. It was actually the middle school graduation that I attended, and it was at Graham High School's auditorium. But I can tell you, there were multiple accesses to enter the building. No one was checking anything. I mean, I just have concerns of giving people a false sense of security. I don't, you can have, there were multiple officers at the Texas shooting. And certainly I think people are, acknowledging that there were mistakes obviously made. But in these mass shootings, it's, they're just tragic things, but having a security assessment beforehand, I think is absolutely key to preventing someone from you know, really causing major havoc. And it's when you see those security measures not being employed, as in the Texas shooting. You know, had there been one way in and one way out, and that one way in was locked, I just think we would have had a much different outcome. If security measures at that school had been employed and been maintained. And it seems like everybody wants to blame, you know, there's a lot of blame to go around, obviously, but I just want to make sure that if we're going to, you know, do something to give parents some reassurances about sending their children and entrusting their children to an administration, that administration is then in fact doing everything above and beyond to keep those children safe. I think it is much bigger than one. I mean, you just cannot, an SRO officer cannot be held accountable to keep everyone on that campus safe. It's the teachers that have to make sure that the doors are locked. It's the teachers that have to make sure that the principal that makes sure that the safety protocols are being, you know, employed. It's the people that are visiting the campus that aren't like propping doors open because they don't want to go around the building to go through the entrance. It's all of those things that I think that we need to make sure that those kind of tragedies can't happen here, or cannot as easily happen here. So I just get, I am in support of safety, but I guess I feel like, you know, I don't want to just fund something and not really know that that's going to work, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I think ABSS is at a critical juncture with parents demanding school safety, and for ABSS to make sure that they're necessitating the security protocols and that they are making repairs to structure. There's been a lot of discussion about creating and forming a task force and staying connected to SROs and each individual school on a more frequent basis. I think the parents are demanding from ABSS, hey, we want to make sure our schools are safe. So you may see some of that one way in, one way out of the school. There has been discussion about securing the entrances to the school. A lot of private schools have already made these changes that the public school system just has not gotten around to. I know there's also a concern of over-policing the school environment. Some parents feel that, you know, so ABSS, I think, is trying to balance a lot of concerns from the communities. So I foresee ABSS making the necessary security changes to their facilities to help make sure that they are safe, as safe as possible.
School safety is a total package. It's not just the locking of the doors. SROs are a slice of the pie. At the foundational level, the SRO is on site, on scene if something were to happen. And unfortunately, they're the pawn that's going to have to sacrifice themselves and go after whatever the threat is. On the other side of the coin, they are there as a resource to the parents, to the schools, to increase police legitimacy, police public relationships. SROs form many different alliances. They serve in many different roles. They do threat assessments to the buildings. They're required to do after action reports after any incident and debrief their school administration. They do engage with the students. School safety is a total package. The brick walls to the one way in and out. Everybody has to do their role to be it safe. I would love to have the time to put together a scientific research study bound project to know what is the total package for school safety, but of course, that's going to vary depending on what geographic area you are in the country. Every school's a little bit different. Well, at the core competency levels, the building and the house is on the school board. The school resource officer, we can be a resource to help with that. And I think that the outcry from public support for their school system is wanting to have a school resource officer in the schools. My children go to a county school that has an SRO. I love it. I love dropping off the line and knowing that that officer is there on site. Will he be able to handle it all by himself? No. But he can stop something. And I think that's where we're at. We're that it's little slices of the pie.
Let's look at this, what we're being asked to do. All right. So we're being asked to fund a total of 10 officers. We got 2 officers we're currently paying. We, the city, are paying 50%, but we'll soon have to pay 100%, correct?
The 2 that were picked up in January for
paid
last
half.
fiscal year were half. They were budgeted for this fiscal year at 100%.
Okay, so they're covered.
Correct.
They're in the budget. The 6
Looking at
COP
eight.
officers.
We're looking at 8 total, new.
New, yes.
Well,
We had
and
just
well, six-
2.
and- well, 2 of those are from the COP, correct?
10 total.
'Cause I
The
thought
2 are
two
already
two were
funded.
already funded,
So
So we're
8,
back to 8.
2 were funded starting January,
right?
Right.
So they're,
before we knew we were going to get the COPS grant.
right?
Then we had another 6 from the, 8 from the COP, 6 from the COPS grant, and then another 2 SRO officers. And my question is can we use the 2 that we funded, not knowing we were going to get the COPS grant for SRO officers? Because we didn't know at that time that we were going to get 6 COPS grant, the COPS grant to get the 6 new officers that we will have to fund after 3 years.
My problem with this whole situation is the county is asking the citizens of Graham to dig into their pockets to fund these people. When the school board is sitting on millions of dollars. If you go and look at their rainy day fund, they got a boatload of money. They say they don't, but they do. And don't get me wrong, you guys are great. I 100% support you. But I think we need to go back to the school board and say, hey, we'll give you these people, but we want more of the funding. We want you to provide their clothing, their guns, everything that you can provide, because it's not right for the citizens of Graham to fund us. I mean, if these guys were on the road, patrol officers, I'm 100% for it.
so
No,
the
that's just
2
my support.
officers you're asking for, the 2 SROs are for the elementary schools, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, for North
So
and
our-
South Graham.
So our elementary schools have nobody and our other schools have an officer in
That's
them,
correct.
each one.
And I would
I
like
mean,
to say,
I mean, me personally, I don't really consider it a knee-jerk reaction when you've already got officers in the other schools to protect our little babies at the elementary schools. To me, that's not really a knee-jerk reaction, to put somebody over there. I know I'd feel pretty badly if something happened over there. And, the city of Graham, we were sitting there with our faces hanging out going, yeah, we had a chance to put a couple of officers over there, but yeah, we didn't think it was, the thing to do right now. And that's just my opinion, I think, as you brought up, it's a piece of the pie. There's so many things that went into that shooting in Texas. There were so many mistakes made. You know, from the teacher that propped the door open and didn't ensure that the door closed properly. And we all know those lever doors, you know, a lot of times if they don't go over center, they're not locked. And she may have pulled the rock out and there not been enough pressure for that door to close. Okay, mistake number one. And then it just compounded from there. Is posting an officer there going to prevent anything from happening? No. Like you said, no, it won't, but might it help? Yes, in my opinion, yes. And that's kind of where I am with it. I think personally, from my standpoint, we need to try to figure out a way to make that work.
If I may speak to clarify some of this, it's all in one clean package, so you can see what the numbers are. But when you're talking about the SRO positions, the 70,000 is off the table for personnel and fringe. You're talking about a vehicle and a equipment kit for the officer. The equipment kit is gonna be a one-time fee up front, except for replacing different things that our budget will absorb later on. That's what our current budget does. Your pair of pants gets, your $70 pair of pants gets ripped. It is what it is. And I throw that number out there because there are certain uniform things that we wear that are just that expensive. You look at the sticker shock on that, you go to a softer look and use khakis, well, you're still spending $50. So I don't want to get into that detail, but just understand the SRO is for the startup cost for that. And that number that you're looking at, that is the number after we have taken from our current budget, taken some things off, purchased our tasers. We
So
purchased
that's the
khakis.
158. It's,
The city liability number up there, is that what is that number?
That side, that was something added after the fact. So I'm just trying to figure out where they got the number from.
because you had the total figure for the
Okay.
2 officers and their
Two
vehicle and
vehicles.
equipment at 298,000. Then subtracting out the 140,000, which I think are the salaries for the 2 officers. So the city liability is the 158,000.
That's going to be roughly about correct. Just I've got some freshened up
Right.
numbers with the current
But
market value.
what you're asking for then is the funding, the additional funding for the equipment and the vehicles,
Yes, sir.
where the
So the
salaries are cut.
additional funding you're asking for is 158,000.
That is for 2 SROs. We also have unaddressed funding for the COP officers. So we're talking about 2 different things under the same pot of money.
And that's the total with the vehicle. They also submitted a price without the vehicle, which was around 62,000 with his updated numbers.
How many fleet vehicles do you have that are unassigned?
Rodney has those figures.
So we have not sent vehicles to auction to anticipate onboarding new officers and utilizing older equipment for a longer lifespan, even though it's at end of life cycle. Currently,
So I want to say, right now, all of our fleet vehicles are signed with a couple, exception of a couple new ones that we've got for for the COP
COP.
grant. And we're waiting for the rest of the equipment to come in to equip them and then they'll roll out. But as she was stating, we have held on, instead of auctioning any cars, we have held on 2 cars in the anticipation that we may have to use them. So right now, with exception of those couple, we got a few spares to assign each shift in case one goes down. I want to say.
A few
we may
being
have
3?
Huh?
A few being 3?
4. We got
Four.
four spare vehicles there. Each shift has
Each
one
has.
spare. So if they have a vehicle go down, they've got something to drive.
Well,
And then we've got some that we've held, maybe 4 or 5 that we have held in case we do need to use them to make them last a little longer. So as she was stating, in this case, when it comes to those SROs, we could possibly use a spare because they're not going to get driven on the road every single day and be put
24
through what
hours a
they've been
day.
put through before we make them spare vehicles. So we can limp them along to make them last for a school resource officer position if we need to. But the biggest thing is the equipment to equip the officer.
so that was our contingency plan. If we didn't receive funding, we've held on to equipment that's at the end of its life cycle. We do understand that the city has multiple departments to fund. And for this reason, we have not surplus or sold at auction vehicles that we said if we had to use them and put them in service, then we would have available resources to deploy those officers.
I mean, the other concern that I have that nobody's addressed yet, and normally in the past, city managers have been very hesitant to, at least the ones that I've worked with, to fund recurring projects when we're not going to get ARPA money next year. We're not going to get money for ARPA the next year or the next year or the next year. And if you hire someone, with ARPA money, who's going to fund it going forward the next year and the next year and the next year? So I would have been, I guess, more receptive to this, I think, if it was for equipment and things like that, that you're not going to have to continue to pay for. So is there,
So for equipment and vehicles, that is the one-time upfront when we onboard the officers. And normally there's a staggered time frame on end of life cycle. So for example, if we put a radio in service today, portable radios that were put in service 4 years ago, the same platform, all of our equipment does not age out the exact same day or same year. So there's going to be a staggered for end of life cycle replacement on vehicles, radios, firearms, tasers, body cameras. Now that's a one and done. Normally when we switch over or transition, which the city just currently made the transition from Axon to a one solution of Motorola. There was a complete refresh of equipment, and that was a one-time up fee, and then an annual contract commitment on the cloud storage and all of the services that go along with in-car body camera, interview room, all of the things that go along with that. So normally every year in our budget, we submit what needs to be replaced. So we're staying refreshed so that it's not a one-time hit. A few years ago, we came to the council and had to ask for $500,000+ for radios because there was no forecasting about the end of life cycle. So when our radios went out a lot, it was just like boom, all of a sudden, hey, Motorola's not going to support these any longer. And the city was scrambling to figure out how we were going to make that one-time payment of over $500,000. And we had to come to the council because there was no planning for end of life on equipment. So that's not the case now.
So the question then, following up with what the mayor was saying. So are you requesting ARPA funds to pay salary, but to buy equipment? which is
Equipment.
okay.
ABSS also increased the amount on the current SRO contract from, Julianne, can you give the exact numbers? Was it 65 and some change to 70? So there is going to be a little surplus in the contracted money that's coming in from ABSS, around 25,000 in surplus, which would include the 2 new positions. So there will be additional revenue coming in from ABSS. I did request from ABSS when they were having conversation after budget approval. We went to a meeting. All the chiefs are in the same situation. All of our budgets have been submitted and approval was in the process. Burlington, Graham, Mebane, Hall River, we were all in that same boat. So when ABSS made contact, I supplied them with cost per officer, and I also made the request for equipment. They said they would, they're struggling with funding, trying to see what they could and could not fund. So they did come back to the table with an increase in the current amount from 65 to 70 per school site.
And that 70 would cover an entry-level officer for the first year. And then once you go beyond that first year, if there was any cost of living, merit, or any other sort of increases, then unless they, move people around or do something on their end, then that would have the city somewhat subsidizing the salary portion of it. Certainly in the beginning, it wouldn't be a significant amount.
Unless you could get ABSS to do that, which is a possibility.
Renegotiate.
Right,
Yeah.
renegotiate, once those officers move into a new tier of pay, right, or a new level.
Correct. That would be up to the city as a governing body to renegotiate those and to say that we've addressed the cost of living, or we've addressed different fringe benefits, and you need to address it.
So the numbers are just a little bit confusing on here, on the thing that you gave in the handout. It says total need without vehicles, 62,000. That's with us using the current surplus vehicles that we have, be 62,101. But up there it says 158,398. What's the difference there?
That was, this spreadsheet you're looking at was modified by, I believe, the assistant chief to show the cost for the two SRO positions. I've updated the numbers, so that's something a little bit different. When you talk about the 62,101, that is what we have, that's what we're asking from the city. We have already put forth $104,000 out of both budgets to offset the total need. So that's why
For the COP.
for the
position.
COP and for the SRO.
So that's for the COP equipment, that extra,
This 62,000 is to address the 6 COP officers and the 2 SROs of what we need for equipment after what I've exhausted from the budget to pay, because I went ahead and purchased handguns.
Okay.
Went ahead, if you see, we purchased laptops because of the delay. Anything that I could purchase ahead of time, we tried to be frugal, and
So what's the 158 then?
the 158 appears to be what was
The
asked.
158
that's the
is supposed
SRO
to
number,
be
right?
That's just
The
SRO.
equipment and vehicles up there. That's
So basically, the total of what you're asking for, including the 6 COP officers, you need equipment for still. And then the SRA, or SRO, excuse me, is going to be the 158,398 plus 62,000. That's the total number you're asking for. I'm just trying to get a total here because I'm trying to figure
Yeah,
out.
'cause
I don't think that's right.
No, the minimum for the 2 SRO positions, and that doesn't include vehicle, the minimum ask is 62,101.44. That's
That's
just
right.
for the city's portion for the current fiscal year for the SROs without new vehicles for them.
Okay. And that's with the
And-
new vehicles.
And cops or no?
No.
And the cops?
The 62,000 is addressing the 6 COP and the 2 SRO
Okay,
for equipment only,
Okay.
minus the vehicles.
Because we
minus
may
the vehicles.
purchase- Yeah, we purchased.
because if you look on the right-hand side of that spreadsheet, I've deducted the 6 laptops for the COP. I knew that was coming. I got up with our IT manager and said,
So part of this
Let's get this in pipe.
158 has already been paid and the shortfall is 62,000. Is that what you're saying?
that's correct.
Okay. So you're really asking for 62,000. Well,
Plus,
let me just say you should have led with that. Okay. So, the fact that we can use them over the summer when we tend to be the busiest, I would be in favor of, doing that. It puts more resources. I don't know what this city would have done had we not had SRO officers available during COVID. Praise the Lord that we had them available and that school wasn't in session, and because I don't know how we would have survived, quite honestly.
Madam
I
Mayor,
mean, that's a big difference. 62,000 is to me, like that's okay. And we could use existing vehicles. And since those people are not out chasing people, as an SRO officer, I think we'll be fine. Would you be okay with that, Chief Cole? Okay.
Madam Mayor, may we make a motion that we round it up to 63,000 and be done with it. And I'll make the motion.
Were you getting ready to say something, Officer?
I just
Wood?
want to, thank you. I just want to highlight that that 62 is just for the equipment for those officers. We're also, the reason that number is so big, that 606, that is incurring the 8 vehicles at 544,000. And of course, each vehicle total kit is $68,000. We still need vehicles for those positions. We do have some that are in the, that they, Captain Flood had mentioned, but these, I want to highlight, these vehicles are in the cycle for a reason. And at some point, you start to, just to keep them on the road, you're at a negative investment.
So what we, as staff, when we come back together and after discussion with the manager, our plan, our long-term plan was to, at next budget cycle, we'll be making requests to replace the end of life for vehicles. So there is potential that there will be an additional request in our normal budget to fund replacing end of cycle on vehicles. You know, there's always got to be some flexibility in every department, and we're going to do whatever we need to do that supports all of the departments in the city to be a good team player and use budgeted funds to the best of our abilities. So we understand that you guys, you know, there's only so much money and other departments have needs as well. So we'll make those requests when normal budgeting time comes.
All right. So what, I'm trying to get clear then. What you want to request for this budget year is the uniform and equipment for 8 officers using ARPA funding. Am I correct?
Yes.
And one set is for $20,000. So you're actually requesting 8 sets, uniform and equipment, $20,000 a piece. So $160,000 committed to ARPA.
60 something.
No.
62.
62.
without-
Remember,
So that's why I'm trying to get,
okay,
that's what's been confusing.
I need a marker board,
So
okay?
the total cost was 158,000, but they've already funded some of that.
Okay,
So now what they have a shortfall is
and
62,000
that's what we're, okay.
to use.
That's the
we're trying to
minimum.
use-
That's the minimum.
That's 62, 63, that's the bottom line on equipment. We've done our
All
due
right.
diligence, took the 104 that we could
Okay.
find and offloaded it to get us halfway there.
We're
Trying to meet
halfway
you
there.
to the
I-
bare
But we're
minimum.
also specifically
Oh,
to
okay.
addressing the vehicles.
Yeah.
There's 8
'Cause we don't
officers
know.
to give vehicles to.
Okay,
6 of those people are going to be patrol functions, 2 of them are going to be in a support role.
right,
And that's the total kit right there for a vehicle is 68.
okay.
So giving you options as far as the,
But
For
yeah,
now.
I'm one of those, just let's get to the bottom line.
right,
And the bottom line is $63,000.
62,001, yeah.
You know, hey, rounding error.
that's just for equipment, that's not vehicle.
Right, okay.
How many vehicles,
That's that's the bottom line, what's what we're lacking for 6 COP and 2 SROs.
Right.
how many have you hired with the COP?
We've currently onboarded 3 that are in field training right now. You add in the SROs, now I'm back to looking for 5 more. I have 2 that I am in the end of discussions with, so we are getting some people in here. It's not as frugal or not as fruitful as it once was, but there are some people there that are still wanting to get in this profession.
So you're gonna move 2 of the ones that are now being hired through the COP to SROs.
Because the school starting contractual obligations, we will take those 2 positions and put them over into the school.
The city of Graham's fortunate to be able to quickly fill contracted agreements for the schools. Other agencies in Alamance County are struggling. They don't have staffing. Due to our application and approval for the COP grant, fortunately, we had already started the process for hiring for community policing. The contract for ABSS will be July 1 to June 30th. So we will receive the entire amount of funding, and we are in a unique position to be able to deploy personnel to those elementary schools immediately. Other agencies are not in the same position as the city of Graham. That was one of the questions that was a hot topic of discussion at the ABSS meeting. So we're in a unique position because we're onboarding for this COP to fill the grant positions. And fortunately, we had just hired 3 officers. So we'll be able to fill those positions immediately in the SRO, and we will go back to the table and have to hire 2 additional COP. So we'll have 5 COP vacancies after filling the SRO commitment in August.
So the immediate need is right now for 1 patrol car when this guy graduates from his thing. And then you'll have 2 backup cars you could possibly put the SROs in, because they won't need
Talking about,
they won't need a certified pursuit car.
make sure
I'm just trying to
So
see.
if we onboarded the 3 COP without vehicles right now, is that what you're addressing? Can-
Right.
Okay. The vehicles, due to the supply issue, you have to order now
Oh, I know.
in order to get them. Yeah.
I don't have a company car. I'm in a rental for the next several months.
But it's unfortunate we have to order so far in advance to get it ready. I mean, there's a possibility that it could be next spring.
Gotcha. I'm just trying to figure out your immediate need for vehicle, because it's more than just the 62. There is a need for vehicle.
That we just know that the decision is to be made on this, and we will need this within the next year. Do I suspect that we will be able to fill those? I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm confident that we will get in those positions, barring no massive unseen issue.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here. Is anybody from Public Works here?
No, as you can see from that sheet, the Public Works project was included in the Long and Albright project that was bid last year. We didn't request that department heads attend. So then jumping down to fire this has been on the list since before your council meeting this month. The ladder truck and Chief Cole is exploring opportunities for perhaps a demo vehicle or a used vehicle. And then the engine 20 replacement, you can see we had recommended to be purchased in conjunction with the new fire station whenever that time comes. So it was marked out for this year. And then jumping down to downtown, there were a number of items submitted. A lot of these would be a little bit more than we could take on at present time. We did leave 2 outside seating area and enhance gateways and add wayfinding signs. But of course, if council wanted to bring any of those that we just happen to put a line through back into play, that is certainly your prerogative.
What is this no main road to nowhere and power pole? What is that?
North Main
North Main.
to nowhere. Aaron, are you familiar with that one? I thought you just ignored me.
No, I was trying to see how it was written, but I don't know if that's the one that there was a pole downtown that I think we had a lot of stuff tied to it, and they were looking at replacing it, but I don't see why that would be on here. I'm not sure it's the same thing as what's listed here, so I'm not sure what that is.
It's probably the one at the intersection of Elm and Marshall. It's got a pretty good sized bend in it.
Oh,
Where tractor
really?
and trailers.
Yeah,
that
it's
turn.
substantially bent.
It's on Main Street?
It's on East Elm Street and Marshall on the corner.
Oh, well, I don't think that's this. This is North
Oh,
Main
okay.
Street.
idea.
what that is.
Well-
For downtown projects, I mean, I'd like for us to consider the longstanding Wi-Fi project down there. And we literally get asked about it all the time. And then I don't know what particular department this would go under, but maybe doing a signature event, or whether that would need to be something that we would just be putting into our regular budget.
Yeah, we had discussed at a budget work session if Arts Around the Square came back, that we would bring it to council with a total cost for potential allocation. So that's something that you may want to keep separate from ARPA funds. But the rec department is working on that.
And what about, we had talked about lighting for security and safety and stuff downtown.
Yeah, so I don't know, we have prices on painting the poles downtown, which I think was around $500,000 without having all the equipment has to be removed so that it can be painted and put back on. Some of it is our equipment, some of it would be other people's equipment. And I think going back to the Wi-Fi, it was around 60,000 for the first year. And then if memory serves me correctly, I think the monthly bill for that is somewhere around $800
Yeah,
to provide that.
96 Yeah, 9,600 a year. So, yep.
And keep in mind, this list is what departments, the individual department had submitted
Okay.
several months ago.
And then I know they had talked about possibly getting those things that go off the poles that hold flower, hanging flower baskets in downtowns, which you see in a lot of other cities, and we get a lot of really good feedback from our flowers now. I feel like we need more flowers in those corner areas because they're not planted, they just have the trees in them. They're not mulched or whatever, but years ago they used to plant when Henry Morrow was here, remember him?
Yeah.
Worked for the city, he would plant flowers all down there. It was so good. And so who was the other fellow that we had planting? He passed away.
Wasn't Al, was it?
No, he said his name. Nice fella.
Who is the gentleman who just returned?
It's such a
Mark.
great job. Yeah,
But Mark's back,
Yeah, he's back with us
Part-time.
part-time now.
Cool.
so
so he's going back.
they did, I mean, we get,
He
I
was-
mean,
he
really,
was-
we get
he's the
so
greatest for
many
flowers.
comments back from the public about the flowers. They really enjoy the attractiveness of the and enhance the experience I think that people have when they visit downtown, and it's a reflection of our community. So
And we can get a number on that. What we had Duke check on was that painting cost whenever we were looking at the poles, because changing the poles out was an astronomical number that I'm not sure if council wanted to entertain that number, but it was a pretty big number to replace the poles out. Then we did the option of painting them because it was a cheaper option, but it's still, you're still looking at $400,000+ to do that. And that's not including cost of the other utilities that had to be taken off and put back on by their folks. That was getting us their cost for their
well,
part.
when we had them painted last time, they like kind of hassled us about it. They had to be gray, and we couldn't pick the color. They would be considered decorative poles, and they'd have to charge us monthly. I mean,
Oh,
this,
really?
yeah, I don't like more money or whatever monthly for a decorative pole versus just
Yeah, I think
their
you have
standard.
a cost if you just do the institutional color. And then you have a upgrade cost if you were to go to a different color like black. You would have to have a specialist come in and paint them regardless. But it's not as simple as just going in, as you know, to go in and just paint them, because the type of paint you use can track the electricity, and you could shock somebody if you don't use the right stuff, and the right person don't use the stuff correctly. Hanging stuff on it, that's another thing that they made us aware of when we spoke with them about painting it. They do want to make sure that we have their permission. There's some form that we have to fill out because the poles have a weight limit. You just can't put stuff on there without them knowing it. So that's why I was wanting to
Did
check
it
on that.
cost us last time to paint it? Because my impression was that it didn't cost the city anything, that the Duke was just going and repainting it.
Right, there's a maintenance. Yeah, there's a maintenance that's included with what we currently have with them. What I was saying is to upgrade the paint, even though they're gonna be painting anyway. I think there was a cost to go
Oh,
something
okay,
different.
for that different kind of paint,
Mhm.
okay. So to paint, which they're overdue, I would imagine.
Shockingly, I thought the same thing, but they said that the life on the painting of those are a little longer than I was realizing at the time.
Is the paint's coming off?
Yeah, we were actually out there looking at them too, and I'm like, man, this thing look like it's due. I think the intervals are a little bit wider than I was imagining on those, but
Well, they look horrible.
but
Right
to go to any other color, and they don't have that pole anymore, so they're looking at us as well. You need to start looking at other kind of poles because if one of these go down, we don't have another one to replace it with. You're either going to get our standard wood pole, or you have to pay to have a upgraded pole put in. So that's where we are on those poles. Those poles they're not out there anymore.
Well, is there any grants to look at replacing the poles?
We looked at them. We looked at what was out there in order to do it. We couldn't come across anything that would work for what we have. I don't want to speak for Duke, but I would imagine they're probably encouraging us to looking at other options if we're going to take the pole down and put something else up. The question is just, would the city want to pay that cost of a replacement upgraded pole, or just go with your standard?
Well, Duke has grants themselves,
They
I
do.
know, for just like businesses and stuff, because I've, seen those myself, but I can't remember what was the upgrade, like if we changed the poles out, what was it? I can't remember. It was really expensive. Is that without them getting any
Yeah.
kind of grant from them?
Yeah, it was, I want to say it was, because they went by quadrants. And remember they had asked us, how far out do you want to go? Do you want to stay in the 100 block? or
I think just the
10?
100 block is all we could even, I don't even know if we could afford that.
Yeah, it was in the millions. It's probably a couple $1 million. It was pretty expensive.
Yeah, I don't see how we can,
And then the weight bearing on those poles may not allow us to, certain poles you can't hang your
Christmas
Christmas
decorations
lights
and stuff, yeah.
banners and stuff like that.
Well, if they want us to replace them, then they should have grants out there to do that, but
We certainly looked. I remember we were trying to see, because we were thinking the same thing. Are there any grants that we could probably find to offset this cost? And we couldn't find any at that time that would work.
And Wayfair, the signage, will that be the signage that they have hanging up and down South Main Street?
The wayfinding signs, like if you go to Elon and Burlington and Hillsborough, it's those big,
I understand what you're talking about.
yeah, I can actually put a picture up if you want me to, but they're the ones that kind of direct traffic, whether car or pedestrian, to a certain location. We had a quote done a few years ago when we had done those parking wayfinding signs, and it included say 7 or 8 wayfinding signs to bring folks in. And we got an updated quote today. You're looking at about $52,000 in order to put those poles up.
Okay.
What about signage on the interstate? Is there any signage on the interstate that we would be able to, does that cost anything to put that out there?
Nothing's free.
What kind of signs are you referring
Some,
to?
I see other signage for the exits that are coming off saying his visit, the
Oh.
historic area or,
Well, someone told me we had one of those brown historic signs already. I didn't realize that, but
haven't seen it, is it? Is there one out there?
someone told me that we had one already. I need to go out there and look for myself, but
Yeah, but that's way back up there on 54 and then it shoots you down to 54 exits where it's supposed to be. And it really needs to be moved to 87.
yeah, well, I know Mebane they actually have a welcome to Mebane sign right on the interstate. Like when you're coming, right down
Yeah,
here.
that's what we need.
Yeah, I agree. I actually was inquiring about that at one point. It seemed like it's a little more difficult to get in, I thought. But I can touch base again to see, well, what did Mebane do to be able to get that? But they do have one right there on the interstate.
Right.
Recreation.
Recreation.
So I know as a part of the budget work sessions, there was some discussion about being able to replace the dock at the lake, maybe in lieu of the marina renovation. The marina renovation was in there, but the cost for hardware alone for replacement of 2 docks of 80 feet apiece is $18,400. And then you would have to have installation on top of that.
Well, that's the that's the labor's the.
Might as well double
problem.
it.
So, it's somewhere around 36,000.
You can
So
see,
just to replace the docks or extend the docks or a combination of both?
That's the grand total for 2 dock, basically replacements of 80 feet.
And I've been down there. I mean, years ago, they were dangerous. I can't imagine what they are now, but they literally just drop off.
Yeah, and they
And-
have the goal to add 2 new docks to separate the 7-lane boat ramp, but they need to repair the ramp before that project is done. So
You're just talking about the docks, not the ramps.
The
ramp-
docks,
What are the
yes.
prices for the ramps?
I don't have prices for the ramps.
That's gonna
No,
be
in the-
expensive.
during the budget discussion, they had $50,000. See, comment was for marina renovation.
For the building, the structure
That was
itself.
for the
Yes,
structure.
sir. Mhm.
Okay.
There was some discussion on where to house the crickets.
I'm just
Okay.
being real. I mean, y'all can laugh if you want, but I mean, you can have the nicest facility there and you walk in and the stench of those crickets are overwhelming. I mean, we definitely need to get them from out inside the building. Oh my gosh, it can't be good for you to smell that all day. Maybe they've become immune to it, but
Okay. That's what attracts the
no
fish.
need to laugh.
That's the bait for the fish.
I understand that, but it doesn't need to be in the building.
So we're gonna move on to water billing?
So I almost feel like the docks are more important than the ramps.
Yeah, and the docks are the
I mean, no,
price.
I'm saying, sorry, the ramps are more important than the docks. Because this is to extend the docks. Not to, like, the docks seem safe to me, but the ramps is what didn't seem safe to me. So the 36,000 isn't for the ramps.
Correct.
How much is the ramps?
I've sent him a message and I will log into Logix to see if there was anything in his initial budget request and get back to you.
Okay, HR,
So HR and finance both had some software requests. And given the fact that we have 2 new modules, well, I guess really 3, the one that was budgeted last year, plus the 2 for this year that we're implementing this current year, we would not recommend funding any additional software changes at this time. Know that we have the capacity to implement more than we've already committed to.
meter replacement project.
21K.
Julianne, would you want to speak to that one?
We are currently replacing all of our meters for all customers with smart meters. We are about halfway through the city. We've replaced about 3,000 meters. Currently, we still need to fund the second half of the city. What is also occurring is a development loan. So in addition to the replacement of the meters, we are also having to put new meters in the developments that are going in around town. On the high end, that's estimated to be 1,300 meters this year if all of the developments come online as it's looking like it will. So that puts us up to about 4,300 meters that we need if all 1,300 come to fruition. We obviously have budget money in our operating budget for this type of work because we have been working on this for a while, but it is not enough to fund the full project. This would get us enough meters to finalize that upgrade and the new developments.
We did new meters many years ago. We had, Evan was doing it at the same time that we were doing it. And we piggybacked on their contract that they had. They didn't want to do it at first. But I made a phone call and said that I would champion to doing it if they didn't give us the same price. We were actually putting in more meters than Mavin was, but they were buying them all at the same time and we were doing them in
Phases.
And so when he heard that we were gonna, I was just one person, obviously on the council, but said I wouldn't be agreeable to that. They ended up coming down on their price. Did we get a contract price or negotiate a price with them?
If we did, I imagine it was probably with phase 1
Yes,
when we started the project.
and that would have happened right around the time I was hired and Beacon Meter was selected and a contract was drawn up along with a warranty and service plan. We buy in phases because once they're delivered, that's when our warranty starts. And so we want to get them in the ground as soon as it's possible to have the longest warranty.
What is, were you able to negotiate that price down?
I did not handle that. Frankie handled that. This was already in the works when I first came on.
We locked in pre-COVID, we may be getting a better price than what they would sell it to us now, but I don't know how the contract was worded.
That would have been around January of 2019, right around the time I was hired.
Are you buying them at today's current price or that?
No, we have a contract price with them. Now, some of the components do go based on market. But the bodies do not. In the endpoints.
You know what the price is per meter versus like what other cities are paying?
I do not know, but we can look into that.
Burlington and Mebane.
Yeah, we can look. I'm not sure what meter they use, if it's the same one that we do, but we can certainly check into that.
So how much revenue or how much are we looking at needing to fund?
For any of the new development, obviously, we charge for those meters. So the amount that you see here, just over 500,000 is net of the revenue we would generate for the new
Oh,
homes that
that's
come
what-
on.
Okay, all right. So you're really not asking for funding
Yes.
If you are asking for funding, how much funding are you asking for?
$521,000.
I'm not agreeable to that without more information. I mean, with one phone call, you know, we saved $100,000. And I don't mean to be flippant about that, but, yeah, and maybe nobody cares, but if I was reaching in my back pocket and taking my money out of my wallet, I would want somebody to be trying to get the best price for us. So we need to see what those meters are costing competitively and trying to negotiate the best price for our citizens that we can and be spending their money very responsibly. 10-inch water line replacement. Now, early on, I know that you guys made a pitch for us to do this, and we didn't want to spend all the ARPA money on this, but this is a great need for us to replace the water line to the water treatment plant. And I was in favor of this as long as we could go out and get grants to come up with the shortfall. Do you know whether we've been able to get, when we'll know about that grant that we applied for?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly when they will announce whether we received it or not. I know Josh has submitted, the information that they're asking for. And then I know there's still another grant that he's working on, providing the last little bit of information that they're needing, because they're needing it at different points. The roughly $5 million that the ARPA is sitting before the city, we had always assumed that about 3.5 of that was going to be for that water line. So that's why it's shown the way it is. I think the conversation that we were wanting to have before was to look at the totality of our infrastructure needs that we have on the horizon, the real close horizon. So it was just so that everyone was on the same page as far as where we are and what's coming up in the next couple of years here. Even though the wastewater treatment plan is, it's more than an elephant in the room, it's still some other big animals right beside it as well. And that's why we want to kind of bring everyone up on the projects like this one and a couple other ones to make sure that everyone is on the same page as far as the projects coming up.
I guess my concern is this is a lot of money to put towards this project, and I'm in total favor of doing so if we're going to be able to get the funding. I mean, the price is 15 million is what you have there, but we had a price of 32 million last year, and it's 83 million now.
Sorry, we're already there. 15 million.
So the wastewater treatment upgrade was previously 32 million is what we thought last year. And then now with everything doing additional, so it's 73 million with I think a $10 million contingency, I guess. And then the 10-inch water main replacement, they have estimated at 15 million. 2 million would be from EDA with 2 million match, a legislative ARP of 3.75 million to help fund, and direct ARPA funds of 3.5 million. So it would still need additional funding even after that. But I guess how real is the $15 million number? Because it doesn't do any good for us. We have to spend that ARPA money within a certain time frame doesn't do us any good to allocate that money for that if we don't have the money to do the project
Well,
match.
the problem is that, you know, with these projects being, a lot of these are state mandated, like the copper lead. We have no choice. We had to do it. We can either use ARPA funds and maximize these grants in order to limit how much loan money we're having to go out to do it, or we had to go out and get loan money. So what Josh put together, his infrastructure costs and funding, it was basically trying to outline a way to maximize the funding so that we could manage the funding that we're going to need and what we currently have. Some of the funding we don't have yet. I want to say of the 140-ish million, I think it was at 137, is what we're looking to have to put out there. I think we've secured, like, with loan money and grants, roughly 80 something. Yeah, 85-ish. So we're a little short of 90. We still got to make the gap up. We're still going for grants and all these other funding sources.
And one possibility with that 10-inch water line, and we would have to run down if it's permissible, would be if council were willing and our state delegation, was fine with it, to use the 10 million that was appropriated in the state budget that passed last week. When it was pitched, I know it was pitched as being for the wastewater treatment plant expansion and upgrade, but the funding for all of that has been secured. And unfortunately, due just to the large price tag, 10 million doesn't make nearly as big of a dent on that project as it would on a 15 million plus water line replacement. So in the state budget, we were listed under the caption of for water and wastewater improvements.
Right.
But we certainly wouldn't want anyone to think that we were, we pitched it for this, but then we really decided to do it for that. So we would make sure that if that's something that council is interested in pursuing, we would see if that would be an eligible use. We could put 10 million of that towards that project, 3.5 of ARPA, 3.75 from the special appropriations from the last budget go round, and then could potentially knock that project out without having to take out additional loans.
So we would get the, which one is the grant that we applied for that I went and got the letters for from the,
That was the EDA.
that's the EDA. So, and you don't have a date as to when we'll know about that?
No, we actually met with,
I mean, a ballpark, I mean, this fall, next year, like what?
I don't have, they didn't give us a date to kind of work off of.
Well, don't they usually, wouldn't you always get it within, or have an answer within 6 months, 10 months, a year?
I mean, with it being federal funds, I assume they're reviewing them in batches as they're looking at them. I just don't know where ours is going to fall with what batch. Are we going to be in the next 3 months? Are we going to be in the next 3 months after that? You will hope that within the next 3 to 6 months, you would know something. Like Megan just said, a lot of this, we're trying to maximize funds so that we can kind of move on these projects, because when you're waiting on moving on them, the price keeps ticking up
Right.
on us. And that just potentially is more funds that we're gonna have to find.
Does the ARPA money, when does that have to be spent by?
26.
It has to be encumbered by 2024 and spent by 2026.
Calendar years.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So December of those years.
And do we have enough time with whoever we're answering to for this water line replacement to be within that project deadline?
And that's why we're having to move, I think, with the 3.5. They need to know, so how's the city looking to pay for this? So we go ahead and put that out. That's why it was always assumed that we would move on that part. We can go ahead and show that. We can show the 375 that we received last year. Hopefully get some of this money that we're pitching for the EDA, piece it all together with the potential 10 million, and we can say, hey, this is how we're looking to pay for this.
Yeah. Okay.
So that was probably really immediate, in my opinion, to kind of show them so we can move on it.
Excuse me, in the 3.5 you're talking about here, when it refers to in this narrative as somewhat designated, I mean, is that possible out of the 4.98, or is that in addition to the 4.?
It would be out of the 4.98.
And the somewhat designated is sort of based on y'all's budget discussions, is that?
Yeah, and even the lunch and learn sessions the council had once the new council was seated. And today isn't meant to be, a one and done ARPA funding discussion, but it would be helpful if we could leave the room with at least some priorities for council. We can prepare a special project ordinance for the ones that you are committed to funding now, and we can get moving on those. And then as other things arise, the council could vote to amend that to change it for what other projects. So when you can walk out of here today and spend 4.98 if you'd like, but that's not necessarily the intent.
Madam Mayor.
Yeah.
Another question, just some other categories not on the list, that I'm wondering if are eligible for ARPA funding. City often does in more graduated phases, repavings. Are repavings eligible for ARPA?
I think they probably would be eligible for ARPA when they issued the interim guidance. When all this really kind of first came to fruition, they were much more limited on what your purposes were. And ironically enough, at the time, paving wasn't really included in any of their infrastructure cost. When they went through the interim guidance and issued the final guidance, they came out with the $10 million, what they call kind of the standard deduction for your revenue loss. So most municipalities didn't really hit the $10 million threshold in revenue loss that, I think everyone kind of expected to have. So you can claim your 10 million, up to 10 million, to be categorized as revenue loss, and that section of money doesn't have as many restrictions as some of the others. You still can't use it for anything retirement related. You can't use it for debt service. And there are still some restrictions, but it's not as strict as the rest of it.
And similarly, answer on sidewalks.
I don't recall if sidewalks were in there or not, at least in the beginning, but I do know that road paving was pretty much overlooked with the rest of the infrastructure discussions.
So what's the,
But Main Street's gonna be repaved this month. Should be starting on it this month or beginning of next month.
DOT.
Mhm.
Yes, but what I'm thinking of in the city's budget is repaving for city streets, right?
Mhm.
And we have power bill funding that we use towards that from the state already. And we didn't do as much with it this past year, which is why we asked for council to move the 200,000 for the Troopy Drive project, because we wanted to maximize the funds. The cost of contractors are just, it's crazy right now to try to get out there and do anything like that. And we really didn't want to not have opportunity to maximize those funds. So, but we do have power bill funds for this year, just like we do for every year to cover those.
so what's the plan to replace all the iron water pipes? For example, the water line on Albright.
Well, this 10-inch water line replacement will be great because it's a nice size line coming in. But each year we have projects that we request to have council approve, whether it's Monterey, Ardmore, where you have older pipes, usually about 350, 400,000, give or take. And we basically go after that in that form. I want to say Long and Albright.
465 originally.
Yeah. So we're addressing them to try to tackle them all at one time with,
But you have a plan.
yes, yes, sir.
Albright is already in the works.
We
So
did.
Albright's already in the works then.
Yeah, we voted on it at the last meeting.
Yeah, okay.
Discussion with Aaron, you're just waiting on a few easements and
Mhm.
whatnot. You're already getting the right of ways.
Yep.
Correct.
We've been working on that.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, going back just a minute. The answer on the DOT repaving is where? Where is that? You said within a month. Where is that gonna take place?
Down Main Street,
It
all the
start-
way from Bethany Church to
North Main.
North Main, all the way up to Providence, isn't it?
Providence
So
Church.
around the courthouse?
Yes.
All right, Madam Mayor, what's happened to all the infrastructure improvements that the city was going to make under that roadway before, if I understood, the plan a year or three ago was to do infrastructure work there before the paving or in conjunction with the repaving?
Yeah, I had a similar question.
$82 million wastewater treatment. $82 million wastewater treatment plant.
Well, that's come in between, and so that's now the priority. Nothing around the courthouse.
Ain't paid. You can't.
Aaron, I'd be happy for you to answer that because that's what I asked Aaron. But I thought it was so imperative that we do that.
I think it's still important to address those. We do have other projects that we are attending to though.
Is there a price tag for the courthouse, quote, infrastructure or around the courthouse?
I don't have it in front of me, but I imagine whatever number I had is yes, no, it's no good at this point.
Well, doesn't this mean if you don't do it now or before they repave, who will pay for the paving if you have to tear up their paving? To fix something, either emergency or replacement.
Well, you can either wait till they come through and repave again in 8 to 10 years and address it at that point, and basically plan to have the infrastructure taken care of prior to them doing the paving. In certain cases, and Tanya and Josh probably have to speak on this a little bit better than I can, it may be okay for us to let them do the paving now and then address certain things infrastructure wise after the fact, even though it is better to go ahead and do it as a totality now. We done missed that boat. They're already coming.
I addressed that early on when I got elected and they said it was too late they didn't have enough time to draw plans or design plans to get that done. And what I see as a big concern down there is the water, the water flow of when we have big rains and things like that, that after years and years of paving and all that jumps the curb and, it just becomes a real problem for how the water flows down there. And we really need like some sort of catch basin or something to be able to and address that directly with Josh. And I think he's looking at some water capture systems in the corners of Court Square. And that you wouldn't really be able to see them, right? They'd basically be like grates. And so when you step off the curb, there'd be like a grate there, but it'd actually get it down into a catch basin of sorts to catch the water. I mean, what was the reason that he was saying he just couldn't get that done before. There was no way that they could get that engineered, bid out and done before the paving.
Yeah, because there were some costs that we were.
I want to say I talked to him like maybe in January or something, like right after we got elected to see what we could do. And they were saying that they couldn't push it out anymore or something.
Yeah, there were some projects we were asking DOT if we can add to their project that they were doing with the repaving, but they're limited being that it was funded as a repaving project. They couldn't necessarily add extra things to it that didn't fall under repaving. So with that being the case, if we aren't able to get to it ourselves prior, then we're, going to have to wait until after the fact. Which is what I think she was speaking of.
I just thought I remember from that study that was just referred to as urgent, to be done in conjunction with this.
What was urgent? What I heard was urgent was the water line on West Elm Street. And I said, well, that's not even anything to do with the paving. I mean, the only thing that I know of that has to be an improvement that would affect DOT repaving is the water flow of Court Square, not anywhere else, not down Main Street North, not down Main Street South, but the repaving around Court Square, the way the topography goes up and down, there's like a dip, and when tractor trailers come through there, you can visibly, if they're going at any kind of speed, you can hear them hit that dip, but that dip's there to try to be able to create water flow and a gravity flow of that water during heavy rains. But do you know, is there?
We have old lines in and around downtown. The thought was that while the world was going to be tore up for repaving and all these other projects, you go ahead and get in there and upgrade those lines. That was the idea going in.
We have a brand new water line down North Main Street. So what needs to be upgraded?
I think it was looking at more than just that area that you're speaking of. I think they were looking at, because we have some old lines that extend down Elm.
Again, not DOT 87 repaving.
But it could be something that affects that space that DOT would be in. Just like when you're saying about moving the water, you have to go further down in the area that you're currently talking about that has the issues. You actually have to fix it down from there so that it moves. It doesn't just sit there. It doesn't do you any good to take care of the problem area whenever you gotta take care of the area up from it. But unfortunately, at this point, we're talking about after DOT paving.
Okay, say we had the time. What will we do on North Main Street for this? What was the infrastructure that was being referred to that demanded that the master plan be approved for the infrastructure that absolutely had to be done?
Well, I think the conversation's kind of gotten away from,
I'm just curious. I would like to know. I think we have a right to know what was the infrastructure that was so critical that needed to be done.
I can certainly pull all the notes from that time. I did not know our conversation was going to go to a couple years back. But I would gladly get that information and provide it to Megan if that's what council would like to see.
Well, since I've taken office, I haven't had a concern from you or from Megan about us doing anything down there prior to the paving, other than the thing that we discussed with Josh, which was the water flow issue, which has been a problem for years. But that's not really infrastructure upgrades, because we have a new water line down Main Street, right?
Portion of it.
So, and we don't have any plans on changing the sewer pipe down Main Street.
I can get a full project list of what was going to be addressed and have it sent out. I don't want to miss anything.
But it's your recollection that it's Elm, West Elm, and East Elm.
I know we have some old lines down in that area, but we have breaks out there. I think we had like 2 in a couple months. It seemed like, because it's just old lines. So the idea was, while they were out there working on their paving, causing all kind of chaos, we can, instead of us causing the chaos, jump in there and try to take care of some of those old lines that were giving us issues.
Yeah, I totally agree. And in fact, that's what my meeting with Josh was about if we're gonna have a ditch open and you're gonna do anything in regards to upgrading lines, go ahead and have conduit in there for electrical, for lighting, for improving lighting in downtown. If you need to have a water line downtown to water the natural areas or whatever, go ahead and, I mean, the expenses and the labor. So once the ditch is open, whatever utilities you want to put in that ditch, you need to do it then because the expense is gonna be in getting the ditch open.
That's correct. And that was the thought, that once we had something open, go ahead and take care of everything while it was open.
I just don't want the public to have a false perception that there was something that was critical that needed to be done that we didn't address, because literally, like, I met with them in January and it was like, no, this is something that can wait. So that was certainly my take from that conversation. And that we didn't have the time to engineer it, have it bid out and have it implemented prior to them paving, and that DOT wasn't willing to push their date out anymore.
Because we had already asked them to hold
Right.
it off already.
Right.
Madam Mayor, could we just ask
Yeah.
Aaron to look into that, and so
Sure.
we can finish up with the item?
Sure.
Madam Mayor, I would like to make a motion that we adjourn our meeting and reopen it on the 25th at 12 o'clock.
I will not be here on the 25th. I'll be on vacation.
On another date that'll work for you.
I will be back.
How about August the 1st?
I'll be gone. I'll be gone for 2 weeks.
Yes.
How about August the 8th?
I'm out of town.
So you'll be gone the whole week.
I'm leaving the 23rd, coming back on the 6th.
I've got another meeting that I've got to leave here and go to. Person, I can't get out.
Is there anything later this week?
Not during the day.
Any evenings?
I've got another coworker that's on vacation. I'm covering his territory too, and my emails have exploded while I've been sitting here.
I can do anything after 5 o'clock this week. That's not a problem.
I'm okay with that as well.
Except Thursday, the county and city meeting at Elon.
Unless we have had,
That Elon, have they
Yeah.
solidified it?
Just
Yeah.
today.
they did.
Today, yes, sir. I sent it out to
Yeah.
council this morning.
Confirm it.
Mhm.
Okay. How about Friday afternoon? Or Wednesday? Oh, Wednesday's not good. for me.
I can make Wednesday work if we need to.
Let's make Wednesday work for everybody. Is that okay?
What time?
I'm out of
Fine.
town.
Well, we're gonna make Friday work.
Are you here Friday? Or are you still out of town?
No, I'll be back Friday.
What time Friday?
5 or 6?
We can do 5. It don't matter to me.
Can't do Friday.
5?
5 o'clock.
Okay with that.
How was that, Madam Clerk? Are you okay with that?
We'll record it.
So if that's the case, I would suggest that council recess the meeting until Friday, July 22nd at 5 PM. And then we'll advertise accordingly.
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion for what Megan had recommended. That we recess the meeting.
5 o'clock.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. We stand in recess until Friday.